Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Marty Braden. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, you're noticing that it wasn't produced with any kind of high quality technical proficiency, that's for sure. And that's simply because I'm not a professional YouTuber. Anyhow, I hope my simplistic approach doesn't put you off, because I promise you that the subjects I talk about are extremely important, interesting, and most of the time quite entertaining. Anyway, I started this channel with the intent of simply going through my book, An Atheist Delusion, and I'm doing short 15 to 20 minute videos to do that. And they're in contrast to what Richard Dawkins says in his book, The God Delusion, with my arguments being from my perspective as a Latter-day Saint and his being from the perspective of an atheist. So, this video you're watching right now is part 69 of my series. In my last video, I covered the cult of Moloch and the depravity of abortion, as well as a brief review of the incredible discoveries that have been made over the last couple of hundred years since 1830. And I'm now ready to review the next subtitle in chapter 3, and that's the argument from personal experience. So let's go ahead and find that and pick up where I left off. The argument from personal experience. Richard is bent on destroying this next theistic argument in order to build his case for a probability that God does not exist. It's called the argument from or against personal experience. Richard says many people believe in God because they believe they have seen a vision of him or of an angel or a virgin in blue with their own eyes, or he speaks to them inside their heads, he says. Continuing, Richard says, this argument from personal experience is the one that is most convincing to those who claim to have had one, but it is the least convincing to anyone else and anyone knowledgeable about psychology. You say you have experienced God directly? Well, some people have experienced a pink elephant, but that probably doesn't impress you. It doesn't. That's a good one, Richard. You just keep making me laugh. Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, distinctly heard the voice of Jesus telling him to kill a woman or kill women, and he was locked up for life. Religious experiences are different from the psychotic stories told by the mentally ill, only in that people who claim them are numerous. Richard then quotes Sam Harris, a fellow atheist, who said the following, and I quote, "We have names for people who have many beliefs for which there is no rational justification. When their beliefs are extremely common, we call them religious. Otherwise, they are likely to be called mad, psychotic, or delusional. Clearly, there is sanity in numbers, and yet it is merely an accident of history that it is considered normal in our society to believe that the creator of the universe can hear our thoughts, while it is demonstrative of mental illness to believe that he is communicating with you by having the rain tap in the Morse code on your bedroom window. And so, while religious people are not generally mad, their core beliefs absolutely are." End quote. They crack me up. Richard then says, our brains construct a continuously updated model, updated by coded pulses, chattering along the optic nerve, but constructed nonetheless. Optic illusions are vivid reminders of this. Richard goes into a lengthy explanation of an illusionary mask he has of Albert Einstein. He says that it creates a visual illusion as one moves around it while staying focused on it. It appears to generate real images of Albert Einstein's face, when in fact it is a hollow mask. Richard uses this as a micro lesson to demonstrate the formidable power of the brain's simulation software to make such visuals and make them seem real. He continues, it is well capable of constructing visions and visitations of utmost veridical, that's a different word, veridical power. To simulate a ghost or an angel or a Virgin Mary would be a child's play to software of this sophistication. Constructing models in something the human brain is very good at, end quote. I certainly agree with the mind that it's extremely good at producing, is what I like to call it, or constructing dreams and visions. It can even imagine movies right on the spot at a moment's notice. It's incredible. I want to insert my own example of how incredible our minds are by sharing a micro lesson I have used to teach how powerful our minds truly are. If you haven't ever looked at a stereogram, you've missed out on an incredible experience. A stereogram is an image that reveals a three-dimensional effect when viewed with a stereoscope or special spectacles. It can also be viewed without these visual helpers, but only if you are capable of making your eyes squint in such the right way that the stereogram's 3D image pops open on the screen of your mind. I don't know why, but I seem to be blessed to be able to do this. It's so cool. Quite often people look and look and look at the stereogram picture without being able to see the 3D image on the dragon that's hidden in the graphic. Just because someone can't see the 3D dragon pop out onto the page in 3D imagery doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or that it exists. The fact is, it is there for all those who have the ability to see it. I often use this stereogram example as my micro lesson to describe the truth that says, just because you can't see something doesn't mean others can't see it or that it's non-existent. On the following page in my book is a black and white example of a stereogram that illustrates what I'm talking about. It has a dragon that is in full 3D mode with an oval shape behind it. It requires that you squint your eyes almost to the point of crossing them. It's kind of unique, and a little staring until the 3D image, bam, all of a sudden comes into focus. It is even sharp and clear. It's a sharp and clear picture of this dragon. So I'm going to hold it up, excuse me, and let you look at it. You should pause your computer or your TV screen and take a look at it and focus in and see if you can make the 3D dragon pop out. So go ahead and pause it and see what you can do. Now, seeing God is very much like the process of how one is able to see the dragon in the stereogram picture that I'm showing you. It takes discipline and following the rules or law of how to position your eyes of faith so that you in fact can see the handiwork of God. And for some, they're able to see the very face of God. Richard goes on to share several stories from his childhood, such as when he heard the faint voices until he saw it was the wind coming through a keyhole. Excuse me, or when the curtains in his home had formed a whimsical face so that his imagination took over. I agree that our minds are capable of constructing, or what I prefer to call producing, incredible dream movies. In fact, I have often wondered how on earth my mind can produce a vivid movie on the screen of my mind even while I am completely awake and deeply involved in something. It's especially true while I'm asleep. My mind seems to create a dream out of nothing. It's probably the simulation software that Richard speaks of at work, right? Like most people's mind, my mind has the creative capacity to construct or produce images of people at the same time my mind's creating or producing or projecting a dream on the screen of my mind, and even placing people I don't even know, boom, right in this mental movie. These are people that I've never even seen or met before in my entire life, as far as I can remember anyway, except at that very moment my mind is projecting them onto the screen of my mind. My mind can also place all of us in a location I've never been to before, except at the very moment it comes onto the screen of my mind. It is very surreal because it's a mixture of both fact and fantasy. My mind, with its so-called simulation software, produces this visual story using no memory, as far as I can tell, using events that are at times spectacular and other times perfectly normal. It can even construct outrageous events, such as having me fly like a fast exotic bird over some vast ocean I've never been on or seen before that very moment. Or it has me flying up to the highest mountain peak that I've never imagined or even seen before, all in a split second, and all the while without having to flap some kind of non-existent wings. It's like these movies are somewhere pre-recorded Getty videos files that have been uploaded and stored in my mind's visual media data storage, so that my mind can call them up onto the screen of my mind in a fraction of a second, seamlessly inserting them into the ongoing dream movie going on in my head, even while it's playing on the screen of my mind. What's crazy is I don't even know when or how this happens. So yes, dreaming and experiencing visions like I've just described is absolutely the most surreal, incredible mental construction process I've ever experienced. Our spirit's intelligence and intellectual capacity seems to be limitless. And when you consider how these dreams and visions just pop onto your mind out of nowhere, it's the most magnificent experience there is. At least I think so. I'm going to do one thing. I just realized I didn't have this on, but that's okay. We'll be fine. There you go. That helps a little bit, doesn't it? Okay. What's important and interesting about this so-called dreaming simulation software with its constructing, creative, producing power to create these simulated dreams and run them on our mind screen in a matter of moments is the fact that they feel so incredibly real to us while we're experiencing them. Sometimes we can't even tell if they were real or not. Much like a virtual reality system can make us feel what we're watching is real when it isn't. I'm going to stop right. This reminds me, my son just barely sent me a little text with a link to the Apple Vision Pro or something like that. It's a 3D visionary type system. It's now like $3,500. It's so real, it wraps around you. It's like you're right into it. And it's all in this little headset. It's quite amazing. So sometimes our dreams warn us of impending dangers before they happen, or they provide comfort when we're in the middle of a crisis, like I received when my son died from his car accident. Some dreams are undecipherable, and many dreams aren't ever remembered once we awaken from our sleep. Here's an example of one such dreamer who had a repeating dream, but when he awoke each morning, he couldn't remember what he dreamed. He just kept the feeling, though. This was King Nebuchadnezzar of ancient Babylon, a king referred to in the Old Testament of the Bible. He had a recurring dream that caused him great concern because he couldn't even remember it, as I said. But the prophet Daniel, praying to God, saw the king's dream in vision without asking the king what he remembered about it. Daniel did ask God to help him know what the king dreamed and what its interpretation was. And God answered his prayer and showed it to Daniel. And then the Spirit even explained to Daniel what the dream meant. And because God did this for Daniel, it saved him and his fellow believers, as well as the lives of the king's counselors who were unable to help the king. I would have you stop and think about that story for just a minute. It's quite a story, isn't it? Joseph, a young Israelite, was another believer in God, like the prophet Daniel. Joseph was sold into slavery by his older brothers and ended up in Egypt. His is a similar dream story like Daniel's. Dreams are a very interesting phenomena of the mind, are they not? How does one say that the creator of all mankind's minds doesn't know how these principles of the mind work, or can't use them to speak to his prophets, or to anyone else for that matter? God can speak to us through dreams, prayers, or any way he chooses. Our mind's ability to dream is a gift, a divine trait that we inherit from our Heavenly Father. It's one of many powers of creations within us. It's one of our mind's divine attributes. I'm going to hit that, sorry about that. I didn't turn it off. I'm pretty sure that animals' minds even experience some kind of dreaming of sorts. That's the power of the mind. This power of the mind is just one more evidence that intelligence exists. And I believe animals have some level of what I'm calling intelligence too. Our spirit selves enjoy this spark of divine intelligence that we've inherited from our Creator. This perspective on dreams has been acquired over my lifetime of study, research, and continual prayer, and its reality is affirmed within the scriptures and by actual personal experiences throughout my life, as well as in the lives of people I've known personally. Richard calls this power of the mind our simulation software because it certainly acts like a computer program, working in the confines of our mind's hardware, our physical wet brain, but it's really the power or programming within our spirit selves mind, as well as in the mammals and birds' spirits' minds too. Which programming directs our physical brain to do what it does? It's simply a function that our spirit selves mind engages in, and as it uses the hardware called our physical wet brain to allow the mind's simulation software, so to speak, to do its creative work, which is called computing. It really is quite remarkable. I'm just not sure what the mind's apps are and how they work or where these spiritual apps and programs came from, but dreams do in fact happen. Maybe they're spiritual packets containing this creative spiritual data, and they transmit them via light and spirit. Anyway, it's something to think about, even though it isn't necessarily that we need to partake of the gift of salvation. I'm going to just do one thing, make sure it doesn't happen again. I'm going to put that on like that. There we go. That's my little timer. That's where I'm keeping time. Not going too long. As I just suggested, this simulation software and its attributes or functions are not unique to humans alone. And that's because scientists have in fact done tests that now show evidence that animals and birds also dream. You should check out this footnote. It's in my book. It's 352, but And you can read up on this study. I wonder what that says about animals' eternal future in the world to come. Interesting, though, isn't it? It is my strong belief that we are meant to create, to imagine, to construct, to produce, and to communicate in ways we may not even understand or know what we're capable of doing right now. One day we'll come to know all that we are capable of doing. But for now, we can only speculate. We also don't know what we're capable of thinking or imagining by the power of our mind. What if we were able to use the full capacity of our mind? What could we accomplish? Can you imagine? My guess is that it's beyond our wildest imagination. One example of this would be the ability to communicate back and forth without having to speak out loud. This is called mental telepathy. This is just one of many capacities or capabilities that I believe we're going to be able to use fully one day. It's been said that our minds use a fraction of their capabilities or untapped cognitive potential. Scientists disagree with this statement, of course, yet none have come forward with what that total capacity is or isn't. I suggest that even though today's scientists suggest that the 10% idea has been bandied around for years, they say it's a myth, meaning we only use 10% of our brain's capacity, and that's, they're saying, is a myth. I believe the power and cognitive capacity of our minds, our brains alone, once it's able to fully function at its highest level, its capacity will be beyond our imagination, that's for sure, because the capacity is coming from our spiritual mind, this mind of our spirit. In fact, I believe that our minds have the potential to increase to knowledge, and in knowledge, capacity, and in light and truth, continually, even infinitely. What do you think? God himself uses thoughts, light, to transmit dreams to our minds as one way he communicates with us, his children. As I said, it's much like a radio transmitting station sending out its radio waves for our TV receivers to receive for our viewing and listening pleasure. Here are several examples of where God communicated to his prophets through transmitted dreams through the power of the air, so to speak. Genesis 15:12 says, "And when the sun was gone down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. These were the Israelites who became enslaved by the Egyptians, by the way. "And also that nation whom they shall serve, the Egyptians, will I judge. And afterward shall they come out with great substance," meaning that your progenitors, your children, will come out with great substance after those 400 plus years. "And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace." And you'll pass away, in other words, Abraham. "Thou shalt be buried in a good old age." He lived to be 175 years old. Genesis 23:7 says, "But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night, and said unto him, Behold, thou art a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. And Abimelech had not come near to her. And he said, Lord, wilt thou slay a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, She is my sister? And she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart. For I also withheld thee from sinning against me, therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine, their whole family, if you don't give him back his wife. Genesis 28:12-15 says, And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy fathers, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, that to thee will I give it, and to thy seed, all this property, all this land. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and the east, and the north and the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Talk about all his prosperity, part of the second blessings of the Abrahamic covenant. 15 says, And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee. In other words, I'm going to keep my promise, my covenant with you. Genesis 31:24 says, And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Genesis 37:5-10 10 says, and Joseph dreamed a dream. This is that boy Joseph, the son of Israel. I think he was the 11th son, and the 12th son was Benjamin, or the little guy. Anyhow, Genesis 37:5-10 says, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. It was this dreamer, they called him. Here, behold, here comes the dreamer, because he talked about many things. And let me tell you, and he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood around about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and even the stars made obeisance to me. It's a pretty egotistical little teen, was he not? I don't know. And he told it to his father even, Israel, who is Jacob, and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? That's pretty good description. What later happened, did it not? Genesis 45 says, and they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker. This is the story of Joseph when he was put into prison because Potiphar's wife accused him, and he was in there, and they had this dream, and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. Genesis 41:1-28 says, and it came to pass at the end of the 2 full years, the Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. Now it's jumping to the Pharaoh in his dream, because we know the story of what happened to the baker and what happened to the butler. The butler, if I'm not mistaken, was the one that was hung. The other one was able to continue to pass his cup and his food. Anyhow, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kind and fat-fleshed, and they fed in the meadow. So these cattle, they fed real well. They got fat over a 7-year period. And behold, even the other kind came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kind upon the bank of the river. So 2 groups. And the ill-favored and the lean-fleshed kind did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kind. So Pharaoh awoke. Oh my goodness. And he slept and dreamed the second time in a row. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up unto a stalk, rank and good. And behold, the 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh woke again, and behold, it was a dream again. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. These dreams worried him, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto the Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. Remember that, Pharaoh? You put the baker and I into the prison? And we dreamed a dream in one night. And I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man in that prison, an Hebrew, servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream, he did interpret. And it came to pass, Pharaoh, as he interpreted to us, so it was. It happened like he said, me has restored unto mine office, and him, the butler, you hanged him, he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought Joseph hastily out of the dungeons, and he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and washed him, and bathed him, made him look presentable. And he came in unto the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. Is that right, Joseph? And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. No, that's not of me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. It's God that's going to do it. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, and lean-fleshed, such as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt for badness. And then, it said, and the lean and the ill-favored kind did eat up the first even the fat kind. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as the beginning. In other words, they didn't change them. They didn't get full-bellied. It just said that got eaten up. And right then I awoke, and behold, 7 ears, withered thin, and blasted with the east wind, sprang up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none of them that could declare it to me. They couldn't interpret it. They didn't know what the heck I was dreaming. That's braiding eyes a little bit. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. Let me going to tell you now what your dream was. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Judges 7:13 says, and when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow, and said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came into a tent, and smote it, that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay along. 1 Kings 3:5 says, and Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, ask what I shall give thee. In Daniel 2:1 and 4 it says, and in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king of Iraq, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants thy dream, and we will show thee the interpretation. Matthew 1:20 in the New Testament. But while he thought on these things, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, thou son of David. This is Joseph and Mary. Thou son of David, fear not to take unto Mary thy wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Ghost. She didn't have relations with another man. She didn't commit fornication. She didn't break her promise, her vows that was promised to you. This was God's will, and it was conceived in her by the Holy Ghost, it says. Matthew 2:12, 13, and 20 says, and being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. And these, of course, are the 3 wise men. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother. Again, he's having another dream. And flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy it. So they took their toddler, and off they went to Egypt, saying, arise and take the young child as his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. So verse 20, now they're coming back, because the angel revealed it again in a dream, saying, okay, it's good to go back to Israel. Matthew 27:19 says, when he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, have thou nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. In 1 Nephi 3:1 through 2 it says, and it came to pass that I, Nephi, returned from speaking with the Lord. He was up on the mountain praying. To the tent of my father he returned to the tent, and said, and it came to pass that he spake unto me, saying, behold, I have dreamed a dream, in the which the Lord hath commanded me that thou and thy brethren shall return to Jerusalem. So Lehi is telling his faithful son Nephi that he had a dream. And in 1 Nephi 8:2 it says, and it came to pass that while my father tarried in the wilderness, he spake unto us, saying, behold, I have dreamed a dream, or in other words, I have seen a vision. These children, the older brothers of Nephi, just were so bugged. They felt their dad was a dreamer. He was whacked. They just did not understand where he was coming from. And I particularly like this verse of scripture found in Job 33 verses 14 through 16. It says this, for God speaketh once, yea twice, yet man perceiveth it not. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumbering upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men, and sealeth their instruction. So that's when our spirit's more apt to hear, when we're out cold, and our pressures and stress of life have kind of been set aside, and we're sleeping. It says, these few examples of God using dreams to communicate with his children are certainly not exhaustive. For I could have listed many more examples from the scriptures where God uses dreams and visions to communicate with his children. But I think it's sufficient to show that he is no respecter of persons in this regard. For dreams from God or otherwise come to both the righteous and the wicked alike. Just like rain falls on everyone, whether they be believers in God or non-believers, it matters not. I'm going to leave it there because that's kind of one topic, and then it continues on with a little different slant on it. So this is a good time to break. I went over, it's at 30 minutes, and so I apologize, but I think I'm interested in getting your thoughts for sure. Share some comments, ask any questions you have, but ponder on this idea of what dreams you've had. What some have been probably a pizza dream, eating pizza too late, or was it truly at a moment that woke you up and you had to go on and write some things down? I've had so many of those. So anyhow, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But until next time, I wish you continued success. Goodbye.